my day-to-day routine, I had it down to pretty much reading, writing, and working out. You know, like I had never really been that disciplined before. I like was able to monitor kind of how much text I was covering. I mean, reading is an excellent thing to do, and I wish I could do more of it now. And I understand why people don't have the opportunity to do it out here because life moves so fast. But I was covering at least, 100 pages of text, and some of it was very dense stuff. You know, like I went through like some of the old classics. I did Crime and Punishment, by Dostoevsky. I actually read Moby Dick. If anybody has ever read Moby Dick, it's basically like reading the Bible. You know what I mean? Like I would read a page and then I need to sit back and like really like soak it in. Like, wow, whoa. And then just wrapping my head around the fact that Herman Melville like had the time to do that. Like, he cultivated the talent to put that out and then actually took the time to write that book. So I feel like, it was actually a time for growth for me. And I also learned a lot about myself and about people. Like, prison, the whole stigma about it, it's the same thing with graffiti. We all front like we're hard. So the world, thinks that graffiti writers are hard, right? Same thing with criminals in general. They front like they're hard. Everybody at the end of the day wants love. Like these motherfuckers are still, want somebody to come visit them. You could be the hardest motherfucker in jail, but like, I'm getting more visits, you know what I mean? Like, and everybody wants that, So like, shit, I forgot what I was even talking about.
We were just talking about your daily routine in jail. You were reading, you were, people, there's a stigma in prison that it's this one thing, just like graph is just one thing, but it's really not necessarily just that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So basically, like, I mean, I could tell you my actual daily routine. I still remember it. Like I'd wake up, go to breakfast, come back to the cell. For the first like 2-hour session, I'd go out to yard. I mostly wouldn't work out in the morning just because I don't know. It's just, I would like to like kind of let myself ease into the day, but I would just walk around the yard, catch up with different people, go back to the cell, chill there for like an hour or so, read. We'd come out for lunch, go back to the cell. And then for the second yard of the day, I had it worked out where I convinced my cellie to leave because he was a little scared. He was an older dude. He really didn't like coming out of the cell too much. But I was like, bro, I need some alone time. You know what I mean? So like we settled on the middle of the day. So he would go out to yard and I could totally actually talk about all this stuff now too, because the prison that I was in is closed and everything. And like nobody could come at me for it. But I had tricked out my door to the cell so that when the COs would come around and try and close everybody in after yard, like basically you make the decision. Either you're going to go out to yard or you're going to stay in the cell. But whatever happens, they're going to come around. They're going to close all the gates. So they would come around and they would close my gate, or so they thought. And like I had stuffed something in there and it sounded like it was closing, but it wouldn't close. And I would open it up and I would come out. And also there were always workers, right? So like inmates who, for whatever reason, want to work for the state inside prison. And actually, I shouldn't even be disrespectful like that. Some of them are working for like 15 cents an hour, saving up to buy a television for their cell because they're doing a 20-year bid, and they're doing it by saving 15 cents an hour. So actually, mad respect to some of these workers. But I would pretend like I was a worker. I'd come out of the cell and I would just like walk around in the yard or walk around in the day room, make sure that none of the COs like were going to be sweating me. And then I would go and I would take a shower privately, you know what I mean? Like without a million people in the showers and stuff. And then I'd come back to my cell. I'd put my robe on. I had a little bathrobe. I had a TV on, you know what I mean? So I'd put on CNN and I would roll up a cigarette. I'd smoke a cigarette in the cell and I would be like, wow, here I am. Like, it's just a tiny little shitty apartment or something like that. I'm alone. Like, you're rarely ever alone in prison. You're always surrounded by people. So like that middle of the day, that was just, that was my time, and then obviously my cellie would come back and we would go to dinner and then we would have evening yard. I'd usually work out at evening yard, come back to the cell, have a protein shake. And then I would read until I passed out. And that was every day. You know what I mean? So like, I still remember that to this day too, like I just got in my routine. Like I did a lot of reading and writing, people would socialize with me. Everybody, like the other thing too is, you can't hide from people in prison. You can't hide who you are. So you know, if you're a fucked up person, if you're like if you're a rat, if you're like whatever you are, whatever you were before you came in, that is going to show. And like how you survive in there is based on who you already were before you came in. So for me, it was like, I'm not the hardest guy in the world, you know what I mean? But that's not the only thing that you need to survive. Like, you have to be intelligent. And I sat back and thought about it at different points, and I'm like, I might not just be the smartest inmate in this prison. I'm probably smarter than the fucking warden of this jail. So really, I should be able to run it in here while I'm in here. And like, dude, weighing 120 pounds, I was able to like run a store out of my cell. You know, we collected on debts. I had people that would hang out with me that would do that for me. You know, I moved weed from like groups of people who didn't talk to other groups of people. You know, like I like settled things like politically with people. I did tattoos on people. All of this shit, never got caught for any of it. You know what I mean? Because I was just like, wait a second, I'm the type of person that I represent, right? Like, there's so many different types of graffiti writers, right? Like, if you go through and you look at all the interviews you did, you've got guys from different neighborhoods, different times, different types of approaches to graffiti. Like, the type of dude that I am is, I'm an out-of-towner with a fascination with New York City 90s bombing and culture. You know, I saw the movie Kids when I was like 14 years old and was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be that, you know? So like, I moved to New York or whatever, and I traveled around and I painted. But I went from, you know, walking down Bedford Avenue, getting a vegan slice of pizza, to being locked up in prison. You know what I mean? And that never really happens. So if it does happen, like if there's anybody out there who is of the same kind of, you know, has the same kind of background, or is maybe like in my group of friends who winds up in that situation, they don't need to fear it. You know, like these are human beings in prison. These are regular guys who were just pushed to do something extreme by the circumstances of their lives. They're not just all like fucked in the head. You know what I mean? Like they all had struggles, but people commit crimes generally for two reasons: out of desperation, because they need money, or because it was a passionate, heat of the moment, like poor decision that they made. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, if you have control of your mind and you don't generally do things like that, like just make a decision that, you know, you're not going to just fly off the handle and kill somebody, you know, then you're probably not going to wind up in prison. And like, I think that society in general just needs to understand that these men in prison and these women in prison are no different from other people out here. That whole stigma should just go away. Like, the prison system should be abolished, period. Right. But one of the steps that we could take towards, because they're not going to do it straight up, it's making too much money for them. But one of the steps that we could take towards like, towards that in that direction would just be like understanding first that these men and women, they shouldn't have that stigma, that scarlet letter, you know? Like, I understand, I relate to poor people and real deal criminals, because I've now, like, you know, broke bread with them, spent time with them, grew up with them, like, you know, and that's the one kind of like really big takeaway that I always try to share with people is like, yes, prison is scary. You know what I mean? Like, I saw violence, things happen, but I'm not going to come out here and front like you can't survive it. I'm not going to come out here and be like, yo, I'm extra hard. I'm harder than the next dude because I went to prison, because that's stupid. Like, it's not something I'm proud of. It's something that happened, but it's also something that, you know, I took the opportunity to try and learn from. And that's kind of something that I just would want to share with people.